Welcome everybody to the Blender Education meeting. I'm glad you all could join. It's an open discussion. We're first going to start with a few topics. So, thank you, Peter. Shortly, you want to
in the thing this year, we had 2 workshop days, 4 hours workshops, 2 4-hour workshops each day. So 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. And it was a great success. And on the 3rd day, we had this normal conference with talks and... okay, the slide is gone. But this was a great success. For the first iteration, we had 70 participants, not 17. In the workshops, we had 16, if I remember correctly. 16 workshops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the last years, we only had the Blender Day where we just were discussing with tutors. They have presented their projects, and as Philip mentioned, this year we started with a much more teaching Blender from ground up. We offered 3 different levels of difficulty for beginners as well as for professionals. And Blender 3D School is the URL where you can find all that information. We have also set up some image impressions from this year's Blender School and Blender Day. And we had a modeling contest, which was very interesting, and lots of very interesting speakers. And here are the workshops, the color codes, the greenish color codes. They stand for different difficulty grades, so everybody could select the tutorials for his or her specific advancement. And here are the speakers from this year. And next year we will do it again. We will have 1 day of workshops. Each workshop is about 4 hours length, so this is very intense. Okay, don't take pictures. Okay, so
yeah, sorry, we're gonna. He's gonna raise the pictures. Sorry, can we continue, please?
Yeah. So 1 day is again the lectures of 4 hours length, and the second and the 3rd day we will have presentations where everybody can just show the work and discuss problems involved with Blender.
Because originally the conference part with the talks was 2 days, and we switched 2 days and have only 1 talk day, and the feedback was 2 days would be nice also. So next year we have 1 workshop day and go back to the original 2 days conference. So we see what that works out. And I want to say 2 things. What the feedback was, or what we learned and could improve. The matching of the pupils to the course was 1 thing. Or I myself also misjudged the level of my course, so it was also a problem. So both ways. So we need to give the the members or the students a way to know their skill level more correctly. And we tried it with giving for each course the requirements, but sometimes you think you know something, but you don't, and then you have to explain it in the course, even if it was a requirement, and that was very a bit difficult. And the other way around, for me at least, I have to judge my course better.
You can see it. It's in German.
It's in German, but here are the requirements for the course.
And it clearly states what is the course about and what is the what do we need to bring to the course to understand everything. And what is very special, where I'm also very proud of, is that all the teachers give all their stuff that they have created, all their models, materials, shaders, at a Creative Commons license CC0 to the community, so everybody can just go there, to go to all of the workshops and download all the stuff and use it at home, which is, I think, very good for pupils and students and everybody who wants to work on it, even after the conference is over.
And also for the educators here in the room, I think Google Translate can help if you don't understand any German, and the asset files hopefully speak for themselves, so you can also use it. They are CC BY, yeah. And
okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we had somebody from Code Motion. Do you want me to open a website?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it will work here, but Motion Kids.
burst into song.
Okay, so well, I this was not planned, but I'm very happy to have this occasion to speak to more educators. We are a company that for many years organized conferences for software developers, professional software developers. It's called Code Motion. So this conference is held in Rome, Milano, also Amsterdam, Berlin, and Madrid. And but what happened 5 years ago was that the two founders, that they are two women, that really they started thinking that also kids needed some sort of education, and so they invested resources and time to create a team of researchers about this, and so we started a branch of Code Motion Kids. So sometimes I joke about that we created the nerds that then will go to the conference later. But actually, what we do is not to create small engineers. We're not interested in it, and we are not interested in some specific software or some specific language. What we work a lot is the methodology. So we developed a methodology based on creative learning, trying to mix the Italian experience and the experiences held especially in USA, let's say in the MIT of Boston. And we use a lot of instruments. We use Scratch, Raspberry Pi, Microbit, any kind of robots, Lego bricks, everything. And we want to use Blender too. So right now we find that the current available version of Blender is lacking something very important, that it's the possibility for a kid to work by him or herself. So what's the because we really want that kids can express themselves, express their creativity, but if the instrument, the tool is not easy enough for them, it will create just frustration, and they will not be able to create. So I hope that this occasion and this kind of discussions will help us as a community to go to reach a point where even very young kids can use easily Blender, not only follow tutorials, because what we found was that they are actually capable of doing everything. You can teach them everything from even if they are very young, they can learn even to use cycles or very complex features of Blender. But the day after they finish the workshop, they will not be able to be independent. So this is, I think, the key point in the educational aspect of Blender. Cool. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi. I'm falling. Hi, I'm Christoph. I got a USB. Somewhere I have no Apple, so I need help. This is a serious issue of mine. I teach Blender at schools at regularly in their spare time. I do it over nearly 10 years, and it's really funny. I brought you today some of the demo reels because the schools are always presenting herself, and I put all the work into one file, and I hope my USB don't make any stress, and we could watch some of them.
Which one?
Stage. Or? Talk. Ha! We got it in the... Down. Talk. Genau. Okay, just open it, and there are videos in there. Wait a second.
Which one?
Maybe 2014 here, Trick Picks. Okay, just start. Oh, it won't. No. Wait a sec. Okay. Not? Maybe. For the kids, hi. Some of them are actually really watching, because every time I go to Blender conference, I say, okay, here's the website, here's the live stream, go watch course. Actually, I miss one course of a Blender conference, but they are quite generous. My kids are between 12 and 16, because it's a regular school, but I also teach older children. Oh yes, it started. Okay, this one is actually pretty awesome. It was a group animation, which means every kid got we made an intro. Just start. Okay, so I explain. We made us an intro animation like Pixar, and we gave ourselves a name. It was Trick Pix. And we discussed about contrast and all these rules. At the end, every child animate one letter, and this little pig is something we modeled in group, which means we make an idea, made the base mesh, modified the base mesh. I rigged this animal and gave him some textures, and afterwards we even animated the pig. So it's a whole group effort, this thing. Just a second.
We will show it. I'm copying the file now. We will show it
Later, okay. So next one, please. Or?
I'm copying the file so we can show it later on.
It's finished copying, actually.
Oh, it's finished. Okay. We can share. Okay. So this is Trick Pix. It's very early on. We got, I think, a project about a knight and a little dragon. So this is the pig, and it's quite awesome. Okay, this is our knight. This is Sir Daniel Rooster. We're beginning to use cycles at this moment, and we got a boy. We got a dragon. We got a castle, and everything is in here somewhere. So yes, exactly. Yeah, so we made turntables, we made the dragon, we made textures, and this is actually pretty amazing because this dragon was modeled exactly by one person. And I could leave her alone. This was totally awesome for me. So we also made some environments, and yeah, that's it. This was one of my first class in Blender. Okay, any questions? Okay. Audience is dead. Great. Well, we got difficulties. Yes, of course. We need to be certain what type of stuff we use. Children always think, okay, they press air and there's a giant robot. So you need to teach children patience about the stuff. Just even to teach them to make a plan first before acting. But if you are going to be patient and saying, okay, you do that, this is good, and now we're going on, or maybe you could go back, and it's a bit of a process. Well, teaching children is actually a really, really interesting thing. I always want to make a talk about, well, surviving teaching Blender. Because children could be very, very... it's a different animal, being perfectly honest. Because grown-ups say, okay, you say do it, they do it. Children say, oh, monkey. And this is totally fine. I actually say them, okay, here you can create objects. Create objects, play with them. You can move them, and you can do everything you want. And I just say, okay, just do something. And someone will always say something like, okay, I want to move this thing, I want to scale this thing. And I also I really liked that the children talk to each other. That someone discovered this thing, so he tells to his neighbor. And I think it's very important that children are learning not only from the teacher, but also from each other. Pardon me. It's my second day of conference, and my English are going very, very thin, so please be patient. Any other questions? Someone? Okay. Who's next? Okay.
I think there's one great initiative I want to mention. That's the Computer Art Club. They're busy in Taiwan, and well, they couldn't be here, but they are also doing amazing things with Blender and creating a lot of cool stuff.
And how are these children are?
I think 7, 8, 9. So it's pretty young. Cool. We have 1 hour.
So, just a couple of things. You saw my plan at the front, which is what we're trying to implement in England at the moment, or the UK, which is about getting them interested, giving them basic experience, and then serious experience before they make decisions about university and education choices. One of the things we have struggled with is to actually get our resources in schools being used in schools. Teachers might be interested, but then the school isn't interested, so they can't teach it. Or teachers might not have the time to learn to teach the resources that we've got. So one thing that we've been piloting last year, and we're hoping to expand this year, is getting college and university outreach to teach school children. So often the industry complains that the people they try to employ do not have the soft skills that they need, so therefore they don't employ them, even though they're very technically capable. We're trying to get college students, which are about 17, 18, university students, 19, 20, 21, into local schools to deliver our materials. So this means the local school doesn't have to skill itself up. It doesn't even have to give any time on timetable, because it can be an after-school club. The students, college and uni students, go into schools. They get soft skills because they have to present, they have to talk, they have to teach the students. The school students get a mentor who comes in and talks about 3D animation, and the school children then are actually able to make better choices about where they go and what they study later on. Because if you're getting people onto your courses at university because they think that games are really cool, that probably isn't the best of ideas in terms of career choice. If they've actually had some experience doing 3D modeling and they still think it's really cool, then yes, let's go let them study. And we've been piloting this up in the northeast of England. We're hoping to extend it this year to, we're hoping about 12 to 20 schools, we're hoping. So this is going to allow us to scale our outreach well beyond what we'd be able to achieve if we were relying on teachers to do it. And we'll be reporting this a bit later. That's an example of what a student did after week 1. We've got a booklet that they're working through. This is all, we'll share this afterwards if you want to have a look at it and translate it or just use it. So we've got that. Then the other thing, which I'm not going to talk about a lot this year because we talk about it every year, is the 3D AMI course, which is our summer school. So once you've got the kids doing the basics in their schools, then they can then come onto our summer course, which is what we've been running since 2012. We've run 24 of these courses. The students make every single part of a short animated film of about 2 to 3 minutes long. We believe we're the only example in the world. We would like to change that. I'm currently supposed to be visiting Kazakhstan because they want to set one up for the whole country in Kazakhstan. If you want to do that too, please talk to me. And our students, we've got students working in the industry now. London's got quite a big visual effects industry, working on the Star Wars movie, Jurassic Park movie, things like that, straight out of our course. They did not go to university. They went and did an apprenticeship based on the skills that they learned in our course. And we're really proud of that. Yeah, and you can see some of the work that they produce. And this is all done in 7 days, every component made by school children. Hardly any of them have any official training in 3D animation. They're teaching themselves at home and very often making the snowman tutorials as a start. And you can go and look at, if you search for us online, you'll find the videos to see what they're all about. So I'm going to end my little session on just some thoughts here. This is what was going on in the other room, which is why nobody's here. But this is the original 2.8 code quest, which was all talking about Blender 2.8 beta. It's nearly here. That's very exciting. We've nearly made progress towards that. Showcase at SIGGRAPH. Blender at SIGGRAPH. Fantastic. But the Blender 101 has been a little bit silent. Now, I know we've got the templates made, or the template system is made, but we do not currently have a Blender 101 template. As in a beginner's version of Blender. And that's what I want the room to think about a bit today. And please step in and correct me if I make any mistakes, Monique. So I'm really excited about 2.8. I've been messing around with it a bit. I haven't been teaching it yet. And the reasons I'm excited about it is because Eevee is so powerful. That picture bottom right would have taken me about 2 hours to do in cycles. It took me 2 minutes, 22 seconds, as you can see, to do in Eevee. Now, kind of photorealism in Eevee on a machine that's 7 years old without a graphics card. Okay, that's really exciting for schools because it's a complete game changer in terms of what we were capable of doing with the old version of Blender, because that would not be possible in a lesson it is now. We do a lot of work around virtual reality goggles. Previously, to get VR outputs out of Blender, you had to go and use cycles, which meant they've made a lovely scene. It then takes 20 minutes to render that scene before you can even see if it's right. With Eevee, you might be able to render the scene in all of about 10 seconds. So it means we can do lots more VR work in schools, which is really exciting. And I really like, you see top right, that's a really bad, well, that's very pixelated. But the fact that you can navigate the interface is the wrong word, but you can navigate the scene without having to know all the keyboard shortcuts and have a 3-button mouse. Okay? That is really, really exciting because many schools do not have a numpad, or they might be working on a laptop without a mouse entirely. So this is a bit of a game changer for us. Very exciting. However, we do have some issues, and I posted this on Twitter a little while back. Some of you might have seen this. Currently, the default Blender interface is the one on the left with a bad cross on it. So if you're a new user, what do those symbols mean? Who knows, right? If you load up your default version of Blender, it might be confusing what the buttons mean. Having the words would be much better. Also, the arrows on the default cube have disappeared because it looks much neater that way. But that's not a good thing if you're a new user, because you're just going to start right-clicking and dragging, which is not a good way of getting learning how Blender works. So I would like to reinstate that, hence the big tick. 2 other issues. In the old Blender default renderer, the internal renderer, if you change colors, then the colors would change in the scene. That was not the case in Cycles, but if using Blender internal, it did happen that way. So now, when you change the colors on your objects, they do not change the color in the scene. So children might just think colors do not work any longer in Blender, which is bad. So I would love to put look dev as the default view in Blender, but I'm sure I will meet some opposition on that front. And then finally, everyone's been arguing over this blasted new design for all the tool menu. I used to say, go find the brown ball if you were trying to look to color things in. There is no longer a brown ball. It is the checked ball. What does checked mean, sir? I don't know. Right? So it's not as accessible, I think, for beginners with the new design there. I'm sure people would disagree with me. So I think that needs a bit of a change too. And finally, I submitted my first ever bug report. It crashes on some Intel processors. These are, so I've been doing some work on Intel processors, but it's not particularly stable at the moment on the sort of processors you'll have in school, and schools will generally not have a dedicated GPU. And I've had the Blender tutorials running on Core 2 Duos, which are probably 10 to 15 years old. Okay, I'd like the same. I think that might be a little bit, pushing it at 10 to 15 years old, but we should be having them working on machines that are about 10 years old. Okay, and I would like to see that happen, because otherwise I wouldn't feel comfortable going into a school. I have never gone into a school where I have failed to get Blender running. If it's not installed, put it on a USB stick. You've found a school, but generally it's something that runs in all schools. And Autodesk, they make their software free, which is great, but it's not going to run on most of the hardware that's in a school which has got budget cuts and all that. So Blender is the solution for a school that just wants to run something which is free and kind of hassle-free as well. This is currently a problem. So, and then I'm kind of ending on this big question from me, which is, do we really need the Blender 101? And I know there are people who really want a new template, but my fear is if you teach a different version of Blender, kind of a friendly version of Blender, then the fear is the kids learn that, and making the leap to the full version of Blender is going to be more difficult. I would prefer to have default Blender being Blender 101 with I'm not allowed to use the word pro apparently, but with the pro mode being the one that if you're a seasoned veteran of Blender, then all this stuff will be set into your seasoned veteran mode. Otherwise, it would be the tick version that I've got suggested up there. Okay, so do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's discussion time.
Yes,
I already see a few hands raised. Basically, it's the discussion time.
I got something for 2.8. This is pretty awesome. You got presets for sculpting and for grease pencil. And even if you change the thingies Reiter, wie nennt man die? Absets. Tabs. You are now putting exactly in the modeling or in the UV or in the sculpting, and everything is set up. This is enormously, it's great. Because if I want to teach sculpting, 80% of teaching sculpting is how to set up Blender for sculpting. I don't need it anymore. It is awesome. And sculpting is very intuitive and gives new beginners the confidence to say, okay, I can do something with it. And if I got the confidence for it, they do more. So, next one.
So basically you're saying we don't, for teaching sculpting, we don't need a template. Yeah. That's it, right? Correct.
Okay, I think the tabs and templates are two different things. We talked about the templates before, and I wanted to, two thoughts to the group. I'm afraid that if everybody makes templates, the maximum worst thing would be every tutorial maker or each tutorial has its own template to start with. Then for beginners, it wouldn't be clear anymore how to use Blender or just to follow a tutorial with this certain kind of template. It is harder than to extrapolate to the own ideas. And the other thing I'm worried about, or it's a challenge to conquer, is if we have this simple template for teaching, how to gradually improve or extend the UI to the pro template or the full-fledged template with every feature. So there should be a path from the simple one to the pro one. So not, okay, I managed to learn Blender with a simple one, now I need to learn a whole new Blender with all features. And the last one was, we talked about it before. Maybe we should put a team effort to improve an educational template, and not everybody thinks of themselves his template.
I know you've mentioned before. What if we get a Blender guru doing their own template and CG Cookie doing their own template, and you get all these nice YouTube and other people doing tutorials online using their own template? How will students be able to learn from all these different templates? And that was a bit of your concern as well, correct?
The same concern or the same learning experiences, I don't find that useful if you have a certain path in a tutorial. So in the end, you can build a snowman, but the goal is to teach the pupil the core parts to add spheres and make a cloud out of it, and not only a snowman. That was, and if you have this specific template, then it's getting harder to extrapolate.
Yeah, I was just wondering if your courses that you give at the schools also inspire the teachers, as in, do they start to model stuff and take parts of your program in their curriculum?
Yes, to answer. I have a few teachers who got inspired, not much. Mostly teachers that also have a bit of an artistic background. So they sometimes see it as an opportunity to also teach something they love. So yes, but it's not very much.
Okay.
I've been lucky. We've got at least one school in London now with their own 3D animation curriculum, because the teacher really, really enjoyed it. And they have an open day, because in London, all schools are competing against each other. And the parents were so impressed with, look, they're learning 3D animation in school. This is a really exciting thing. I want to send my student to this school. So the school has really gone behind this now, and they're supporting it. But it is hard to find space in the curriculum, because it's not on the curriculum. And the school will have to drop something else to put that in. But some schools, yes.
I just wanted to respond on the custom template thing. I don't think it's a concern at all, because the way I look at it is, if what you're teaching relies so much on a template, you're not teaching anymore, right? You're very specifically telling them to hit this button and do this next thing. But if the template is usable and working, then other people will adopt it. I think it's going to solve itself in that regard. So if Blender Guru has a template and CG Cookie has a template, but the Blender Guru tutorial is just how to make a rock, right? And the template is very optimized for making rocks. Yeah, it's useful for that, but you're not learning anything, right? You're not getting anything out of that. So, but you have to don't underestimate the people we're teaching, right? They'll realize that. They notice that.
I started teaching with 2.8 this semester, and now I'm teaching college students who have some design background already. But 2.8's interface is a lot less intimidating than 2.79's. 2.79 and before, they presented you a whole bunch of buttons, and those buttons didn't lend themselves to their function as obviously as 2.8. The new icons are debatable. Like, for example, the render panel is still a camera, but the camera settings is still a camera, and so I think maybe we could come up with a better solution for that. But what I would see is, if you show students the template, or not the template, but the Blender interface that they'll get when they download it at home, there'll be no surprises. And so it's not that, my experience is, it's not that big of a chasm to get over the basic orientation of how you drive around in the scene, and then they'll fill in the other gaps as needed. So that's what I've experienced.
Yes, I think it's 90% there, and I said the moving around the scene things I think is absolutely fantastic. But for me, it's if somebody's trying to explore a little bit beyond what they're learning in a tutorial and they're on their own without a teacher, I think they need a couple of extra guidance points. And if they are changing a color and it doesn't change, they're going to go, what's going on here? And if they go, oh, well, that looks like move, but actually that's rotating. What's going on here? I think there were a few little tweaks which I don't think really change the core functionality, certainly for somebody who knows how to use Blender, that I think are really quick wins just to save an extra 5 button clicks or an extra 1 minute at the beginning of a tutorial to explain this is what you need to do to get it into a mode which is easier to use. So that's where I am. Sorry, massively.
No, I just wanted to add to the discussion. On one side, it's true that if you start with a tool that it has a sort of template or interface, and then you want to go on and it changes completely, it can be confusing. But at the same time, I think that especially for very young kids, you need to give to them the possibility to make mistakes. So if they need to do tinkering inside the software. So this is something that it's very basic, I think, in education. Again, I'm speaking about especially with the younger kids, because if I cannot do simple tasks and combine shapes and play with it, because in creative learning, one of the key points is the play aspect of the educational process. So they must be happy while working, and I think that a specific interface can help this. So one idea, just brainstorming, can be why don't we create a completely crazy different template for Blender, like completely colored with a kids version of Blender. Because also I wanted to add just one thing. At least in our work, we don't want to create Blender users. It's not our aim. We don't even want to create a 3D modeler. We simply need a tool that lets them express themselves in a comfortable way. So I think that this is more important for kids than to have a professional future. They will have time to think about money, about the industry or university or things like this. But when they are kids, they just need to play, do things, be stimulated, and be creative. Then they will learn that what they used until that moment was Blender, and they will be fan of Blender, and they will love it, and they will jump into the professional aspect.
Well, I'll just add to that right now, when you download Blender 2.8, it gives you on the splash screen several starting points: a general 3D, drawing 2D, and visual effects. And I don't think it would be too much to ask for a simple beginner layout that would simplify the interface, not change the interface, but just present you the basics to help you get started. Maybe, yeah.
Cool. I see we're short on time. We only have 10 minutes. Alex, you had wanted to discuss 2 points. So want to give you some time?
Sure. My name's Alex Myers. I'm a professor at Creighton University. It's in the middle of the United States, in Nebraska. It's a Jesuit university. We have a small design program there. And I've noticed over the last few years that a lot of regular graphic designers, people you consider mostly two-dimensional artists, have started moving into 3D tools to do a lot of their illustration. They're eschewing, normal modes of just drawing or painting or working in vectors or rasters for the control that a 3D environment gives them, the flexibility that a 3D environment gives them. So I started incorporating this into my curriculum, and I've found that Blender is, because I'm a Blender user myself in my own work, Blender has become a much friendlier way of showing my students how to do this. Friendly from it's free, there's a great community that teaches them how to use it, but also friendly in the sense that my students can pick it up really easily. Like this idea that there's this huge learning curve to Blender, I've found to not be true at all. I mean, as long as I have someone to sit there or some tutorial videos to watch, and I deal with mostly university students, but I also teach it to kids 11 to 16 when I teach like 3D design fabrication workshops. And one of the reasons why I'm teaching them all this stuff, and mostly just sticking with Blender, is that we run the gamut of 3D fabrication to illustration to 3D modeling to video game design to motion graphics, and I can show them how to do all of that in Blender without having to pay any licensing fees whatsoever. So we were able to cut $10,000, $12,000 out of our budget, or I'm sorry, add it into our budget, because we were able to stop using things like After Effects, Maya, those sorts of programs. I don't really have much else to say other than that. We still have to balance, like the next point is also mine as well, we still have to balance the use of proprietary software in our program as well, because there is an expectation when our design students go to get jobs that they know how to use vector, like common vector and raster-based programs. And in my experience, and I don't know, Brent, you'll probably argue this, but in my experience, Inkscape and GIMP just aren't up to the tasks of things that Illustrator and Photoshop can do. But as far as everything else, I mean, I've fully incorporated Blender into my curriculum, and it's been nothing but good over the last few years. So I would encourage everyone to do that if you don't already. So that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So with your, I guess, production with like getting it into the schools in the UK, you were saying that you have one school now that has that's running it, but with other schools it's hard to fit it into the curriculum. What about using that first school as like kind of like a model for the other schools to follow? And if it's been so successful, and in the UK it's kind of like a competition to try and get kids into the schools, then shouldn't it be easy to pitch to other schools so that they would adopt it?
We've been really bad at selling ourselves. So we've got a lot of material. We've got people working in the industry. We're trying to build up case studies and talk about what's successful. So I mean, it's a very, very valid point, and it's something that I have on my to-do list for next week. So and when those resources are shared, we're trying to make them all open source. So if you are in an institution that wants to look at those, or you know people who may want to use those, we want to share them, and the good news stories as well.
Okay, so another thing. Last week I was in Wexford in Ireland, and I met a vice principal that lives in the UK. And I was talking to him about Blender and talking to him about how it would be a good idea to get it into schools there. So I could link you up with him because he seemed pretty interested. So that might be a good in. And at this point, when I go back to Canada, I want to try and get it into some schools in BC and use those as kind of like a pilot project to then bring it to the whole school board of the whole province and try and get it into the courses there as an option for students as well.
And I think that leads on very nicely to the last thing today, which is we need to think about how we work better together. We had some success from last year in that we got the tutorial was translated into 5 different languages, and we had new tutorials being made as well. And we need to think of a better way as a group that we can communicate, because obviously we have people at university level here, we have people at school level here, we have people at club level, or people making a business out of selling this, and we need to think of a way to work better together. Ton mentioned you that I need to find you today, so I think you're the guy from Canada that I need to talk to.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
that's really good.
Just another side note, at the front of the building, I have a bunch of like handouts that are printed and for people to take and to bring back to their own communities to put in libraries and stuff like that. So I brought them all the way from Canada. They're heavy. Please don't leave me with any, because I have a bunch at home that I'm going to be distributing. So go and take a handful and then drop them off in libraries or pin them up on boards or whatever in your community to just spread the word. That'd be really helpful for me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
We'll be glad to we'll be glad to see some of the work from your students. And if you get to that level, let us know how we can help out. But it's also a call out to the community here, the educators. How can we work together? What can we do to get this to the next level? We've already made some huge process.
Do we have a forum or something other than once a year at the...
Well, we have the BF Education mailing list. Now, I know there are quite some educators that have been complaining about this mailing list because some people don't read it and some people are posting not very serious subjects to that mailing list. So we can say we can start again with the mailing list.
We've got Twitter as well. So
we have Twitter and we have a Slack channel. But I think Peter was here, who showed me that part of our old Slack messages have been cut off. We have 10,000 messages, or more than 10,000, and now they want us to pay. So I know Peter proposed to go to a more open source platform to have just the one-on-one discussions that you don't want to bother a whole community of BF educators with, because that was what was the Slack channel is meant to do, is to get the one-on-one discussions that you want to do. So if you just leave me your names and email addresses, I know Peter proposed, and it's not Peter Kemp, but Peter from Poland, proposed to set up another channel, a more open source channel, where we can have these type of discussions.
if we're not in communication with you, then maybe we'll catch you out near the coffee afterwards. You can just give us your email address if you're okay with that, and then we'll try and get an email out to you telling you how to get in contact with each other. We have been using the B3D101 hashtag on Twitter. If you use Twitter, there's also a B3D101 Facebook page as well. So if that's a way that you communicate, you might want to use those to post messages or examples of your work.
That would be great. Anyone, any thoughts? How to move forward?
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask also, because apart from an educator, I'm also a software developer. So there is the nerd side of my life. And I would like to know how to contribute to the project in a nerd way. How can we do it? Or
that would be great. Yeah. Well, basically, do you want to create tutorials? Do you want to share the tutorials?
I was thinking more of for example, how can you create a template? I don't know if there is already some materials or, make some prototypes. Focused on the education side.
Yeah.
So we have many ideas here, and maybe that something will...
that would be interesting. If you want to propose a template, again, let's set up a channel where we can discuss. Maybe something like a template, the BF Education mailing list would be handy, because that's something I think you want to discuss with a bigger group. So I hope you all are on the BF Education list, so let's post it there. I haven't seen much tutorials on how to create templates, maybe one or two. But I can poke Campbell. He's the developer of the Blender 101 templating engine. I'm not sure if I can call it that, but we can we can ask Campbell to help us out and see how we can create a template and propose it to the community. Cool. Jason is already looking at me. I'm afraid we have to wrap up. Meet us over at the lobby. We can have a discussion, have some coffee, some cookies, some tea, some brownies. So thank you all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.